Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of Chavín de Huántar, the Peruvian oracle temple that used sound and psychedelics to reach the gods. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction. Not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. High in the Peruvian Andes, at an altitude of 177 meters in the Conchucos Valley, there is a stone temple complex that was the most powerful religious center in the Western Hemisphere for approximately 1,000 years. Chavín de Huántar was built beginning around 900 BCE and served as an oracle center that drew pilgrims from across the Andes until its decline around 200 BCE. But this was no ordinary temple. The pilgrims who came to consult the oracle did not simply enter a hall and receive a pronouncement. They were subjected to a carefully engineered sequence of sensory experiences designed to disorient, overwhelm, and ultimately break down their rational consciousness, leaving them open to divine communication in a state that modern neuroscience would recognize as psychedelic. The sequence began before they even entered the temple. The approach to Chavín was controlled so that pilgrims could hear the sound of the temple, a deep, resonant roaring, before they could see it. The sound came from the Caracol, a system of stone channels built into the temple that carried water from the two rivers flanking the site through underground passages, producing a thunderous, spatially disorienting acoustic effect experienced as coming from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. When pilgrims finally entered the temple, they were taken into a completely dark system of subterranean galleries that disorient even modern visitors. In these galleries, priests administered San Pedro cactus, a mescaline-containing psychedelic, in the form of a ceremonial brew, while continuing the acoustic assault through ceramic instruments. Then, at the peak of the experience, pilgrims were brought before the Lanzan, a 5-meter-tall, carved granite monolith depicting a fanged supernatural deity, positioned in the darkest, most acoustically resonant gallery of the complex. This was not religion as spectacle. This was religion as neurological engineering, a systematic protocol for producing altered states of consciousness using architecture, sound, pharmacology, and darkness in combination. And it worked, apparently, with extraordinary effectiveness for over 1,000 years. The question that haunts researchers is not just how this was done, but who figured it out. Someone in the early first millennium BCE understood enough about human neurology, acoustics, and pharmacology to design a multi-stage consciousness engineering system that predated the invention of modern neuroscience by 2,500 years. Who were they and what did they learn? This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we go further, if you are finding this investigation compelling, please take a moment right now to like this video, drop a comment below with your thoughts, and share it with someone who loves a good historical mystery. If you are watching on YouTube, hit subscribe and tap the bell icon so you never miss a new episode. If you found us through Facebook, tap follow on our page. It takes just a few seconds, and it genuinely helps us keep making these documentaries. Now, let us get back to the investigation. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the global puzzle of unexplained ancient construction. And to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. Catastrophism, the idea that Earth's geological and cultural history has been shaped by sudden, violent events rather than purely gradual processes, was once the dominant paradigm in science. It was then largely displaced by uniformitarianism, the The principle, championed by Charles Lyell in the 19th century, that the present is the key to the past, and that change occurs slowly and continuously. The pendulum has since swung back. Modern geology and astronomy have confirmed that catastrophic events, asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, rapid climate shifts, have profoundly shaped Earth's surface and life upon it. The Chicxulub impact that ended the Cretaceous is the most famous example, but it is not alone. The Younger Dryas cooling event 12,000 years ago caused radical shifts in human habitat within decades, not millennia. The Bronze Age collapse 3,000 years ago ended multiple interconnected civilizations in a generation. These events matter for archaeology because they reset the evidence. A major catastrophe does not merely destroy a civilization, it destroys the record of that civilization. Survivors carry only what they can remember, and memory degrades with each generation. After a few centuries, the grandchildren of survivors have myths where their grandparents had engineering manuals. What archaeologists find when they excavate ancient sites is not the full picture. It is the fragment that survived the last catastrophe. The full picture may be forever gone, preserved only in the ambiguous traces that puzzle researchers to this day. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding Chavín de Huántar, the Peruvian oracle temple that used sound and psychedelics to reach the gods, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. Chavín de Huántar was built in multiple phases beginning approximately 900 BCE and continuing to approximately 200 BCE by the Chavín culture, a civilization named after this site that had no known predecessor of comparable complexity in the Andes. The site occupies approximately 4 hectares and includes a complex of above-ground plazas and platforms, as well as an extensive system of subterranean galleries, more than 500 meters of interconnected stone-lined tunnels beneath the temple mound. The galleries are so precisely constructed that their walls remain upright and their ceilings intact after more than 500 years of seismic activity in one of the world's most earthquake-prone regions. This single data point, if taken in isolation, be set aside, anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the Lanzón monolith at the center of Chavín's underground gallery system is one of the most extraordinary carved stones in the Americas. This 5-meter tall, knife-shaped granite stela is carved in the characteristic Chavín style, an intricate, highly stylized representational art form where animal and human features are merged and stacked in ways that require sustained study to decode. The figure depicted is a fanged supernatural entity, sometimes called the Great Image or the Staff God, combining features of the jaguar, caiman, and serpent with a human body. The Lanzón is positioned at the exact acoustic node of the gallery system, the point where sounds from multiple directions converge and amplify, and a shaft in the ceiling above it connects directly to a chamber where priests could speak, their voices emerging from the stone mouth of the deity below. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations, before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. Stanford archaeologist John Rick, who has led excavations at Chavín since 1995, has documented the acoustic engineering of the gallery system in detail. The galleries were designed with multiple turns, T-junctions, and changes in ceiling height that produced complex acoustic effects, including extreme reverberation, standing waves, and spatial disorientation. Ceramic instruments, ceramic vessels made with multiple chambers and openings, found at the site produce sounds in the 50-80 Hz range when blown, near the threshold of human hearing, which can produce vibration sensations in the chest and skull. Combined with the reverberant stone galleries, these instruments would have created a sonic environment qualitatively different from any natural space. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, physical evidence for psychedelic ritual use at Chavín includes the discovery of multiple types of psychoactive plant material in archaeological contexts at the site. Snuff tubes made from fox snouts and bone, and ceramic vessels decorated with images of shamans holding San Pedro cacti have been found in the plaza areas. Chemical analysis of residues in several ceramic vessels has identified alkaloids consistent with both mescaline from San Pedro cactus, Echinopsis pachanoi, and dimethyltryptamine, DMT, suggesting that the ritual pharmacopoeia at Chavín may have included multiple substances administered at different stages of the oracle consultation. San Pedro cactus is native to the Andes and was almost certainly in use as a sacrament long before Chavín's construction. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of the Chavín style of iconographic art spread across the Andes during the early Horizon period, 900–200 BCE, in a pattern that archaeologists have called the First Andean Horizon, the first time a single cultural and religious tradition spread across the entire region. Chavín-style ceramics, textiles, goldwork, and architecture have been found as far as 500 kilometers from the site. This spread is interpreted as evidence of the site's oracle function. Pilgrims who came to Chavín returned to their home communities, carrying Chavín iconography on objects, textiles, and tattoos, spreading the prestige of the oracle center and attracting subsequent generations of pilgrims. The mechanism by which a single religious center achieved continent-wide cultural influence in a pre-literate, pre-political state society remains a subject of active research. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding: the water management system at Chavín de Huántar is one of the site's most impressive but least studied features. Two rivers, the Masna and the Huachexa, converge near the temple, and the builders constructed a sophisticated system of stone-lined channels that diverted water from both rivers through the underground gallery system. This hydraulic infrastructure served multiple purposes. It allowed the temple to flood and drain galleries at will. It produced the thundering acoustic effect heard approaching the site. And it may have permitted water-level manipulation within the galleries during rituals. Researcher John Rick has proposed that the ability to suddenly flood or drain an underground space during a ritual would have been a powerful and terrifying demonstration of priestly power over the natural world. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations. And in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain Chavín de Huántar, the Peruvian oracle temple that used sound and psychedelics to reach the gods. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that the oracle engineering theory, developed primarily by John Rick and his Stanford team, proposes that Chavín was deliberately designed as an oracle center where priests used acoustic manipulation, psychedelics, darkness, and controlled architecture to produce religious experiences in pilgrims that were perceived as divine communication. Under this model, the entire temple complex was an instrument for consciousness alteration, with every architectural decision, gallery width, ceiling height, number of turns, the position of the lanzon optimized for maximum psychological effect. This theory now has strong support from the acoustic and chemical evidence and is approaching the status of archaeological consensus. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence. But it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the shamanic transformation theory, favored by art historian Richard Berger, interprets Chavín as a site where pilgrims underwent shamanic transformation, entering the underground gallery, as humans and emerging as something other, having symbolically journeyed to the underworld and returned with supernatural knowledge. The imagery of the lanzon and other Chavín sculpture consistently depicts transformation between human and animal forms, particularly jaguar, caiman, and raptor. This transformation iconography is common in Andean shamanic traditions and suggests that the oracle experience at Chavín was understood by participants as a literal metamorphosis. The pilgrim temporarily became a supernatural being. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that the political control theory argues that the Chavín oracle was primarily a political institution, that the priests who controlled access to the lanzon were using the oracle's reputation to exercise power over neighboring communities. Under this model, the psychedelic and acoustic engineering was less about genuine spiritual experience and more about manufacturing compliance and awe. The spread of Chavín iconography across the Andes would reflect not voluntary religious conversion, but the imposition of a prestige hierarchy centered on Chavín's oracle. Critics note that this cynical interpretation, while historically plausible, requires us to assume the pilgrims were passive subjects rather than active participants in a tradition they found genuinely meaningful. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding Chavín de Huántar, the Peruvian oracle temple that used sound and psychedelics to reach the gods, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes the acoustic measurements conducted at Chavín by researcher Miriam Kohler between 2001 and 2013 provide the most detailed documentation of the site's sound engineering. Kohler's work using acoustic measurement equipment and Chavín-style ceramic instruments demonstrated that the gallery system produces extreme reverb times, sounds echo for up to 2-3 seconds in some galleries, combined with infrasonic frequencies, below 20 Hz, below the threshold of hearing, but felt as vibration that produce disorientation, anxiety, and a sense of presence. These effects are enhanced when the galleries are filled with people, as body mass changes the acoustic properties of the space in ways that Kohler has documented. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented chemical residue analysis of the bone and ceramic vessels found in archaeological contexts at Chavín, conducted by archaeochemist Melanie Miller, has confirmed the presence of alkaloids consistent with both mescaline and DMT in multiple samples. The snuff tubes made from fox snouts found in the circular plaza are morphologically identical to ethnographically documented Andean snuff tubes used for inhaling powdered psychoactive plants. The combination of inhalation equipment and ceramic vessels with plant alkaloid residues represents compelling physical evidence that psychoactive substances were systematically administered in the ritual context of the Chavín oracle, not merely used incidentally or recreationally. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed the shaft connecting the chamber above the lanzon to the figure's carved head below is one of the most remarkable features of Chavín's architecture. This vertical connection, which allows a voice spoken in the upper chamber to emerge apparently from the stone mouth of the supernatural figure below, is an example of acoustic misdirection so effective that it has been independently replicated in multiple other ancient oracle sites, including the Hypogeum in Malta. The combination of the shaft with the psychedelic state of pilgrims and the acoustically reverberant gallery would have made it genuinely impossible for a participant to locate the source of the voice, creating an overwhelming experience of supernatural communication. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding Chavín de Huántar, the Peruvian oracle temple that used sound and psychedelics to reach the gods. Now, we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. Chavín de Huántar was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1985 and continues to be actively excavated by John Rick's Stanford team in collaboration with the Peruvian Ministry of Culture. New discoveries continue to emerge. In recent years, excavation of the circular sunken plaza in front of the temple has revealed elaborate stone friezes and additional carved figures that extend the iconographic program of the site far beyond what was previously known. The galleries themselves continue to yield new evidence about their use, including additional ceramic instrument fragments and organic residues that are being analyzed with increasingly sensitive chemical techniques. The broader significance of Chavín for the understanding of religion, consciousness, and social organization in prehistory is increasingly recognized outside specialist archaeology. The site has become a reference point in the academic study of psychedelics and consciousness, cited by researchers including Michael Pollan in How to Change Your Mind, as evidence that pharmacological consciousness alteration has been systematically integrated into human religious practice for at least 3,000 years. The current scientific and cultural reassessment of psychedelics in therapeutic and spiritual contexts gives Chavín de Huántar a relevance far beyond the Andes. It stands as the most thoroughly documented example of a pre-modern society that deliberately engineered altered states of consciousness as the foundation of its entire religious system. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of Chavín de Huántar, the Peruvian oracle temple that used sound and psychedelics to reach the gods, from the historical record through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Chavín de Huántar ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence present in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please help us reach more people. If you are watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new documentary. If you are watching on Facebook, tap the follow button on our page to stay connected. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.